morning. Good morning, everyone. Hey, Jeff, how's it going? Got Jeff and Karen. Good morning. Hello, hello. Miss Karen, how are you? We can't hear you. Oh, we've got folks joining in.
Is that better?
It's awesome. How's life in Durango?
Oh, it's so beautiful. We've had such a great summer. We had so much rain, and it's just really turned everything around. It feels so green and lush and beautiful here. It's just incredible.
Oh, that is so awesome. Arizona finally got some rain this year for summer. So we are loving it. It's green outside. We don't even know what that color is.
Isn't that funny? Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, we drove to Vegas, I guess, the weekend before last, and it was green the whole way to Vegas. Just incredible. All those little dry, parched fields out there that have one cow in them, they had green. It was incredible. So yeah, there's been a lot of rain in the West, which is good.
So. Yes, we do. We do. Yeah. I love this. And I see we have Jeff. Jeff, good morning.
Good luck with that one. He probably turned his computer on and ran away for a minute.
I see him in the room. Well, this is going to be a lot of fun. We just finished, Karen, our first series of Basics in the Box, and we've got about 3 market centers that are supposed to be on here today, and it's all fun. So we're going to get started, and as people start joining us, that's great, or if they don't, that's great. I might modify it if we end up having a very small class, yet at the same time, super excited to have you here. And I want to see if, Jeff, are you looking to live stream this in your room? Perhaps put in the chat if you can hear us.
You can hear me now, can't you?
I can. Good morning. How are you?
Good, thanks. No, I'm just running it on the training room computer because I was using my computer for something else.
Awesome. Well, we're so glad you're here. And as I was just sharing, we have about 3 market centers that are supposed to be participating today. And either way, we are going to have a really fun day. So here's how we're going to get started this morning. I would love to hear, Miss Karen, you've been in the business a long time. What's going on and what would you like to accomplish today?
Well, I consider it, truthfully, for me, it's like failure to launch. I swear. I have people who run right up to the finish line. Well, I do. After I get off the phone with them, I swear a little bit. But it's like people run right up to the purchase or to the, to the listing. And then at the last minute, they like have a freeze or an inability to commit, shall we say. So it's it's becoming perpetual. So I'm trying not to get in that mindset where I'm saying to myself, this is perpetual, but it seems to be, and it started probably sometime right around the first of the year, right? People that weren't sure that they wanted to list. And they were like, oh, the market's going to get better. I'll just hang on, And then, much to their surprise, things didn't change, or things did change. They started to get worse, right? And so now they have this exactly opposite fear. The buyers have this deal where they're sure the market's going to crash and they're going to get some kind of, 50% off deal. And so they kind of have a hesitancy. And so it's kind of like between the two things, between not being able to get a seller to list, and I have 2 or 3 of them out there, and not being able to get a buyer to complete their contract. I really am just like, I'm perplexed, shall we say. And
I'm perplexed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought that up because that is a common it's shared among agents across the country, that same thing, although it's not shared with every agent across the country, right? So we're going to definitely talk about that today and add that into our system. And Jeff, how about you? What are you here for today?
So I think that to what Karen's saying, so many of my agents are having a similar challenge in that the buyers are hearing about certain pocket markets where, the market is certainly soft, where there's opportunities. They may want to wait. Our selection, of course, is super limited. With the rising prices, of course, we've kind of reached for a lot of people that point of buyer intolerance. And in my 27 years, what I've seen is, the market prices go up. You kind of hit a point where the buyer tolerance is thresholded, and it levels off for a while, and then the prices go up again. One time people say, well, prices have to come down 25% at least, and one time in my entire 27 years, have the prices in Durango come down, and they came down minimally. We didn't have a lot of fog and mirror loans. We didn't have a lot of the issues that catapulted so many markets into that really problematic situation. We had very little REO and short sale come through at that time. It did soften because all markets softened. But I just don't see a reason why our market, I still have 2 months of inventory. I don't have a situation where it has switched to a buyer's market, but there is a buyer tolerance issue. And I think helping them to get past some of that thought process is what I'd like to actually get out of today.
Got it. We're gonna address that one head on. In fact, depending on who is on this call, we may modify this a lot and walk away with a solid plan. And yet, because we are recording this and we'll share this with you, and you can rewatch it, you can share it with your market center, however you'd like to do it. I am going to cover it so that it is the class. Fair enough. Because we might miss something, or we might be able to add something, although other parts we may just fly through it. Okay, if that's fair with you. So here's what's really interesting. Let's take a look. I believe you all have your buyer packet, this course packet. Do you need anyone need a copy of it? Christine, my assistant, is over here to the side. She'll help if we have any challenges this morning. Let's go ahead, Christine, and start with our slide deck here. And we'll fly through some of these. You guys both know me. For those who are watching on the recording, my name's Denise Meyer. I've been in real estate a little bit longer than Jeff, 30 years. We just hit the 30-year mark last month, and do a lot of things with Keller Williams, teach KWU courses, bold instructor, and sold a whole lot of real estate in my career. And so we're super excited and happy to have you with us today. Let's go ahead and move on, Christine. And we've already covered what we're here for today. Let's go ahead and just pull that down for a minute. So taking a look at what I'd like to look at, Christine, is the 7-step buyer service cycle slide. I believe it is slide, it looks like this in your workbooks. Let's go ahead and pull this up. And, as we're talking about the challenges with buyers right now, what I'd like to do is let's take a look for each of your own businesses, taking a look at giving yourself a rating in each of these areas. And this is what we're going to cover today. Some we're going to dive into more than others, and some will go through pretty fast because we do find that our market centers do a great job at some of these on a daily consistent basis. So it's more training. Yet we start with leads, right? So I would like all of you to give yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 in this circle, in that box, that trapezoid, I think it's called. Give yourself a rating on getting leads going to appointments. So converting a lead to an appointment. Now, I'm actually going to discuss this for each of you right now. In a normal market, whatever that is, across the country, what we're finding is that in a normal market, it takes on average 30 leads to get an appointment. Literally, actually 30 leads to not an appointment, but 30 leads to close for a commission check. So what it might be is that every 10 leads, you get an appointment, and every 3 appointments, you get a signed and closed deal. Now, when markets shift, let's go ahead and pull that down for a moment. When markets shift, Gary Keller speaks about in the book Shift that we have to double down on our leads. We have to double down on it. And then as agents, we don't always like that, right? Because that is a lot more work, right, Karen? Like speaking, if it's 30 leads to get to a close, and now he's saying we got to have 60 leads to get to a close. Okay, are you like me and you're sort of like, really? And yet, that's what happens in a market like this. We have to double down. Now, the good news is that there are going to be a lot of agents who aren't willing to do that work. And yet we have to, as agents, get better with our systems and models. And we're going to cover pre-qualification today so that those 59 people don't take as long as the 30 used to take. So we have to get better at our systems and our models and our skills so that we can work through the 59 to find the one, right?
Yeah.
So what I'd like you to do is on a scale of 1 to 10, and I'm talking about market of the moment right now, market, how are you doing at doubling leads to appointments? Literally, we have to double the number of leads. And of course, that means lead generation.
Right. Well, and leads to an appointment. I'm just trying to get a response at this point, and I have tried it all. I have done the Home Snap, concierge. I have done Market Leader, where you have, tons and tons of email. And just a couple weeks ago, I started Follow Up Boss. I'm just trying different systems.
Yeah, and you might give yourself a high score on that. We've got 7 areas, right?
Right.
So go ahead and everybody give yourself a score on a scale of 1 to 10 in your business for this market. Where are you at? 10 being, I've got all the leads I need. 5 being, yes.
I would say getting leads, or let's say getting prospects, because it's really what you start with is a prospect, right? You turn the prospect into a lead, and then the lead becomes an appointment. So prospects, I'm getting a ton. There are a ton of people out there curious about the real estate market. There's a ton of people out there who are really wanting to see if maybe they could get their feet in the water, right? But are they able to not just monetarily, but are they ready emotionally and mentally to do the things that it takes to switch from being a renter to being an owner, And so psychology is coming in a lot. I'm finding that I'm becoming a psychologist for people to try and help them to get around their limiting beliefs about who gets to own property. So
Kara, this is, and I appreciate this, and Jeff, chime in if you have more to add to this. So in some markets, sometimes we have to triple down on our lead generation, or we have to change the source of lead generation. I hear you saying that you're working different sources or feeling like all the sources. So this might be an area where we say, okay, we're going to dig in deep today. All right. Now, Jeff, how about you? What are you seeing in this area?
I think that there's a lot more creativity in trying to get to appointments. I think that what we're seeing is a lot more, and not just buyer side, seller side, all across the market. The situation from 2021 especially, but 2020 and 2021, when buyers just wanted to get here, whatever had changed for them, they now had a mindset of, I just want to do it now. whether they could now work from home, whether they sped up their retirement. So many of our buyers collapsed a timeline. And so it wasn't that that Durango wasn't on their radar. It was on their radar with a 5-year plan that collapsed to a 1-year plan or a 3-month plan or a 6-month plan. I do think that part of the challenge that we've got in the market is that those buyers is what created such a fury of activity over the last 18 months. And now we've got to probably have a little bit of a period where we got to catch back up to that buyer activity. And we may have to really dig for buyers or switch to a listing side market, because what we still don't have are sellers.
Yes. And I think you've hit on that. And that's actually one of the slides and conversation points we're going to get to in this section is, what is the number one lead source for buyers? Well, it's to have the listing that's sellable, right? And then how do we put systems around that listing so that we're capturing the buyer versus the other agents capturing those buyers and bringing them to us? So, thinking, how can I have a double end on this sale? I was just up in New York, and there's a fun agent up there, and she calls these Mimi sales. And I said, what is a Mimi sale? She goes, well, it's me who got the listing and it's me who got the buyer. I'm like, I want more Mimis in my
Mimi
world,
sales.
right?
That's funny.
Mimi sales. Yeah. So I can't take credit. That is Miss Robin White out of Hudson Valley shared that the other day. So how do we get these Mimi sales? And so that is it's a key piece of this buyer program is being able to cherry pick the buyers that you work with, because you have all the listings and the market that you guys are working in. I'm going to share, having 50 signs up is the best advertisement to capture buyers. Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So that's a pretty fun idea. All right, Christine, let's put up our slide again. Here's what we're going to do. I'm actually going to move through this a little bit differently. So let's go ahead and talk about the next slide. We're going to flow through a little bit of information and stop where we need to. Let's go to the next slide. We've already done that. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, leads to appointment. Here we go. So let's dive into this next slide, Miss Christine. All right, so here's what we're going to talk about today is lead sources. And we're going to do, because there's the three of us, we're going to do a mastermind here. And yet let's talk about the lead. So let's go ahead and pull that down. So let's talk about where buyers come from in a challenging market. So the very first thing is to know demographically, where do your buyers come from? So you are somewhat of a resort market. What percentage of homeowners in your area are out of area owners, second homes or investors versus full-time residents?
I'd say 25 to 35%, Jeff, wouldn't you?
I think that's accurate as far as if you combine, right, out-of-state owners.
Yeah, I mean, land is always a high number for out-of-state owners. They come here, it's beautiful. They want to buy something. They own it for 7 years, they resell it. And we see that all the time. We have real estate agents that made careers off of working with people who do that.
Yeah, vacant land purchases that never ended up building.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have
I
that
understand.
out-of-town buyer, but for people that actually have a residence that, only come here part of the year or something like that, is probably 25 to 30%.
Got it. Okay, super. So, and yet it's a strong piece. Do they come from one area? Like, do they come from Denver? Do they come from New Mexico? Where do they come from?
So our second home markets are probably strongest out of multiple Texas markets, Austin, Dallas specifically. And then your area, Phoenix, Scottsdale, is a prime second home market for us. Some Southern California. Whereas our feeder markets for people who are moving here, those are included, but our number one is actually the Front Range of Colorado. People that got to Denver and then didn't figure out they didn't quite make the Colorado they were after. Start looking typically at Western Slope communities like ours and Montrose and Crested Butte and places on the West Slope where if they'd like to go for a mountain bike ride, it doesn't take 2 hours between getting ready and getting to the trailhead.
Got it. Okay, so this is super helpful. So let's mastermind this. So if the number one way to capture the best buyers is to have listings. All right. What's the second, third, and fourth? We're going to put together a list here. We can have a lot of different types of ways to capture buyers, yet we're going to come up with the top 2 or 3 once we mastermind. So what are some other ways that you can and we're just going to yell them out as we think of them, including myself. How do we capture buyers right now? What are the different ways we can find a buyer?
Well, a lot of Facebook leads are coming in. I'm getting those. I'm getting leads from Sphere of Influence. I'm getting leads from lenders. I'm getting leads from
I'll
Where
tell you,
else?
other agents in our office, if you can get to an in-town listing, because we have so few. So that, you know, an open house in a rural area is not going to do any good. But if you can get to an in-town open house,
Yep.
you're going to have buyers through.
Got you.
And maybe
Okay.
3/4 of them are represented by somebody else, but there's going to be still people through that aren't.
Right.
Got you. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So I've heard, and then I'm going to add to it database of any kind.
Right.
And yet, as if we could, let's break up database. So I'm thinking of an agent database for referrals in the markets that you just talked about. So what if you had a database of, like I heard, Dallas? What if you picked 10 agents in Dallas and start marketing to them? And on that database, you also have 10 agents from Phoenix, 10 agents from Scottsdale, and 10 agents from Paradise Valley. And maybe you include the team leader of each of those market centers and the OP, because they usually have teams or get the question, who should I refer to? So what if you were able to have a database of 200 agents in those feeder markets for both full-time residents and part-time residents?
Yeah.
There's a lot of value to that.
Yeah, there is
Okay.
a lot of value to that. And that's kind of like a geographic farm that's not
Yeah.
people, but realtors. That's an interesting thing to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, you know, what I'm thinking about that is to answer, okay, so let's keep masterminding here. What else? I wrote down old leads, old buyer leads.
And I think that's true because we hear, and I've had a lot of this on several of my sites, especially using HomeSnap Concierge. A lot of those buyers that hit my website are not ready to buy. And that's what the concierge is getting back. I would say 80% of them say they're not ready to buy. And so those are really, and that's one reason for looking for a good follow-up program, is because I really want to keep in touch with those people as much as possible. So, you know, there's basically.
You know, if we go back, because sometimes what I find is what old is new again. Especially when we have a flurry of activity, which I'm going to call 20 and 21, right? This flurry of activity. So now what's old is new again. And especially in more of a rural market, well, really anywhere, the buyer psychology, if we go back to the psychology of a buyer, and this isn't even the workbook, you guys, yet the average person, before they actually move into that new home or sell that home, starts to think about it, they say 18 months to 2 years prior to actually doing it. So when Gary talks about getting into the middle of that cycle, whether it's the buyer or the seller, in this case, you've got buyer leads coming in. We get them from 18 months ago. We got them last year. If they didn't do anything, look, they still don't want to be on the Front Range. They still want to be in the quote, the real Colorado, yet they got stuck in the Front Range, right?
Right.
Yep.
And now they've got it like in their mind, they don't know about tax laws. Did I gain a lot of value in this house? I got to find a job there. Like there's so much that goes into quote moving. So we got to get in the middle of it and have bigger buyer pools than we've had in the past, like the last 2 years. So we have to go back to what was old. So what was old, remember Jeff, I know you remember, they called the Durango Chamber of Commerce and asked for a buyer packet of information.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And speaking of, I wonder if that's still a thing.
I don't know.
I don't know.
They don't have that wall of brochures anymore in the chamber, because both Jeff and I are, active in the chamber, and they don't have that wall of brochures.
Right. That's all in the tourism office.
Right. So I think that you could do an advertising on their website is probably, the place where you could put it. Is to be the realtor on the banner or something like that is more what you could do.
And I wonder if if you can purchase monthly the email list of everybody who requests information. What's old is new. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe the tourism board just thinking outside the box a little bit.
Well, they used to have a list years ago, and I belonged to the tourism office, that anybody who had contacted them for information, they would send you information on that person.
Yes.
And then they also had a backwards list that you could buy into, where you could get information about anybody who had contacted like the ski area or something like that.
There you go.
And those were expensive. They were like, 75 cents a person or something. It wasn't, when you add that up, that could be,
Right.
A good bit of money pretty quick. But I remember them having something like that. I don't know that they still do, but I remember them having something like that.
And Karen, that brings me to another thought as we're thinking of databases, right? So databases. What if for smaller communities, this is because it's like everybody knows everybody, right? Especially in the business world.
Right.
Do we have a list or a database of the HR managers of every company? The person, who's the HR director and the chief of staff at the hospital? Any small UPS, FedEx, do we have the managers there? The ski resorts, the top 5 executives at the ski resorts, do we have them? Any big resort, anything like that, like putting together a top 100 list of local community.
That's a great idea.
People who hire.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really great.
So let's start wrapping up this section. And what ahas are we having when we're talking about lead generation, right? Leads are everywhere, and we may have to double up, right? What we're doing, yet without it taking up more time. What are you hearing or ahas have you had so far?
Well, the realtor farm, which I kind of have one anyway, but I haven't been deliberate about it. And I probably could be more deliberate about that. I mean, KW has great tools. And so inside of KW, I have, probably 1,000 people that I'm, a referral partner with. So I have that out there already, but I haven't, like you said, been deliberate about it. The other section is, looking for the top 100 execs. That's really a great place to maybe start to get your name in front of people and be, have them be aware of you. So,
great insights. And what I'm thinking as we go back to the original challenges, the inability to commit. So we're talking about buyers that are putting their toe in the water and they're testing.
right.
What I'm talking about is how do we find the leads that aren't testing? And we have to go to the people who have those leads. And to me, that's anybody who might be hiring or interviewing folks for the area. So if if the hospital interviews 3 doctors for this position, one of the 3 is going to buy, where you might have to get 20 Facebook leads to find somebody who might buy in the next 2 years. So now we're going to the people who can give you 3 leads, and one of them will be buying a house there, which is very different than the 20 and 60 and 100, right? So for
Right.
me, I'm thinking we have to go to the places where the leads that we receive are are more ready, able, and willing. And Karen, they're referred to us. So I'm thinking if you write down speed of trust, speed to trust.
Right. Which is
We wanna
always
work-
the key to turning someone into
Mhm.
being your client, is that
Mhm.
they have an automatic feeling of trust for you. And
Yeah.
that's why sphere of influence leads are so strong, is because people come.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we've got realtor referrals. Okay. High speed to trust. They're using you and they're coming here to buy a house. We've got the top 100 in the market in your community. Speed to trust. Hey, use our agent Karen, or use our agent Jeff, like high speed to trust right there. So we got to change the definition of a lead to somebody who's referred to us almost, right? And then of course, past client sphere of influence.
Right.
And past client sphere of influence. So we're going to stay in this lead generation for about a hot second here. Let's go ahead, Christine, and put up the 4-step lead conversion that capture, connect, cultivate, PowerPoint. Yet what I'm thinking about here is that we have to know in our database, Karen, we have to know every single person in our database, past client and sphere, their 1 to 2 year goals when it comes to their living situation.
Right.
It's almost like we have like the French dossier on where you're going and what you're doing, right?
Right.
Yeah. In a perfect world, when would you be selling this house, or would you be downsizing, or would you be, when your children graduate, or when you have a family, or whatever that looks like, knowing what those future goals are for the next 2 to 3 years, really. Because if the average person is thinking about it 18 months to 24 months in advance, we've got to be in the middle of getting to the middle of that transaction or that
Right.
thought process.
Right.
Okay. And some people started thinking about it last year and didn't do it. So when you find out, they're ready to go now. Yet, yeah. So with this, let's take a look at this chart. And I know that you guys are familiar with this, yet it's about capturing. So to me, that lead conversion is about, number one, changing our definition of our lead sources, or perhaps changing up our lead sources so that we can find ready, able, and willing, right? Of course, and that speed to trust is high, that we can find people within our community and that have high speed to trust. Of course, our database, knowing everything. So we capture, and then we're connecting and cultivating. So connecting is where we stay, we're working to work that. And then they say, oh, I'm going to do something in 12 months. Well, now we push them over to cultivate, and we have a different message with them based upon that till we close. All right. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time with that yet. I'd like to go, Christine, to the 5 methods to establish rapport. And then we're going to quickly move to the next slide. Yet here are the 5 methods to establish rapport. And really this is about speed to trust. Speed to trust. And we don't spend a lot with this here. I do want to point out there is a great class that is called Language of Sales that helps us with a lot of this, that if it's a MAPS coaching program, if people would like to spend more time getting to know about this. Yet the 5 methods to establish rapport or getting to that speed to trust is that we mirror and match where they're at. We connect with their different communication styles. I love your market center. When I walked through those halls years ago, Karen, you guys all had like, I'm a D, I'm an I, I'm an S, I'm a C, right on the outside of their office. I thought that was so cool. I'd never seen that before. And that's really about connecting with them through their communication styles. We exceed their expectations, provide value, ask questions. Let's go to the next slide because it really handles number 3, 4, and 5. And it's about the pre-qualification. And you have in your workbook, and I'm going to send you guys after this, the whole one. So it's on a page where you can print it out and modify it if you'd like. Yet I'd like to talk about pre-qualifying right here. Let's go ahead and pull this down. Now, in my opinion, this is Denise's opinion, in both working with buyers and sellers, 99% of their speed to trust and their decision to work with you happens right here. I don't think it happens on the showing appointment. I think it happens before they go and look at the first house. And if we don't capture it, we're always working harder. So when Gary Keller says that we are now in a skills-based market, if there were one skill that an agent were to get better at and get better fast, I think it's the pre-qualification. And so my thoughts about the pre-qualification are simply this. Number one, 100% of the time, 100% of the time. And if we're in a world right now that it does take maybe on average 60 leads to get a commission check, I would say the skill, one of them is asking these questions of every single person. Now, here's what I found in years of doing this is that if somebody is motivated to buy a house and I jump in the first conversation and ask them these pre-qualification questions, they get it right. It's almost like a pop quiz and they answer it all right. When they're not ready, able, and willing is when they give us pushback and they don't get the answers right. That's like, and so where we have to protect our business and work with the ready, willing, and able, we can do that by asking the pre-qualification questions. Now, I also think that we call it pre-qualification. To them, it's getting to know us and speed to trust. So, of course, we don't say, I'm going to ask you pre-qualification questions, right? It's more like, yeah, it's more like, Karen, I would like to get to know you and find out what's important to you about purchasing a home here. And hey, whether you're looking to buy now or in 2 years from now and just gathering information, I'd like to be your agent.
Perfect. Yeah.
And so, yeah, and now they'll tell you, well, really, it's 1 year from now.
Right.
And they're not getting in the car with me. Are they going to get in the car with you?
No.
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 Oh.
No. We might meet for coffee.
We're going to give them a list and say, knock yourself out. Here's our app, and it tells you all you need to know.
Yeah. And well, I mean, we might meet for coffee because you never know. Somebody who's moving here often knows somebody else who's moving here. You know, so you can actually get some referrals off of that if you build that relationship. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the pre-qualification questions. And in any great pre-qualification with a buyer, number one, there's really like 3 sections of a pre-qual. And so whether maybe you're sitting at home and you answer your call at 4:30 in the afternoon because you thought, you were done for the day and you have to pre-qual, or you've got your pre-qualification form in front of you. I do like the idea of having a paper pre-qual form. If we're going to close, let's call it 20 buyers a year, we probably only need 10 of these a month or 5 of these a month, really, because halfway through, we're not going to finish the rest because they're not pre-qualified.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then we can keep our tickler of, we know that what's old is new. Keep the ones we're going to work with. Everybody else goes into that long-term follow-up to be followed up with and given value over time. So let's take a look. So the very first section, if we were to break pre-qualification up, and this is really about the connection, ask questions, speed to trust, rapport, the very first thing is we have to know their motivation. And I'm going to share, if you have a 15-minute conversation, probably 10 minutes of it is getting their motivation. So what are some examples of questions that get to the buyer's motivation?
Well, I mean, there's the basic ones like, what's your interest in moving to Durango? And then you would go deeper on that, well, we have family there. Oh, who in your family lives here, and what side of town do they live on, and so on and so forth. And you can kind of dig into that. But then there's also like, if they're moving here for a job, which is used to be a big thing here when we had a lot of gas and oil industry. So, I mean, there's several different, maybe it's just because they want to be outside, mountain bike and fish and kayak and all those good things. So we have people, especially since the pandemic, who are moving here just for those reasons. So it's a good area. It's central to a lot of bigger cities. You can be in a big city in 4 hours if you need to be. And yet we're still really a super great small town. So we get a lot of people.
So, and what I love about that is it's important to understand their circumstances, right? So circumstances are very important because that is part of the motivation. Now, on top of the circumstances around the move, what else is part of motivation?
Well, a lot of times you're digging, really what you're digging for in their motivation is the emotional side of it, because that's what you're going to use as the ticket to be able to help them to go ahead and commit, right? And so, so that's kind of what you're looking for, is what emotional tick can I put in that, if they're a passionate mountain biker, you can talk about all the trails and subdivisions and areas that are central to trails. And those homes would be a good fit for you, that kind of thing. As well as, maybe they're moving here for family and, they want to be somewhere near that family. And it's really important to them to have that, that link or that exposure. So
what's important about a situation, what's important about getting closer to your daughter who just moved here, what's important about it, right? And it's really about the grandkids.
Right.
Right. So if we can get to the emotional piece of it, Karen's got a client that's going to have to step up a price range because where she wants to live, which is where all 3 of her children live and the grandchildren are, she's kind of priced out of at this point. And yet she keeps coming back to that spot. That's where she wants to be in Durango. And so it's this emotional, is it worth the extra $200,000 over what you wanted to pay, so that you can be closer to where the grandkids are and they can just walk to grandma's house instead of having to get across town somehow.
And I think like you just nailed that piece of it. There's both the pleasure of moving and there's the pain of not moving.
Right.
And so we have to know all of that. And so, what's interesting is that why is somebody going to share this with us when we've just met them?
Right.
And here's, this is going back to speed to trust. People will link good feelings with those who have the ability to ask those questions and make them feel good about the decision, right? So they link good feelings with you. And this is where if we ask this 59 times and 59 of them get it wrong and 1 gets it right, I'd rather work with that 1 this week than the 59 others who won't answer my questions.
Right.
And the very few times that I've had people not answer those questions and they just really push that I should take them out anyway, you know what? And I could think of 3 of them. I can think of all 3 of them and not one of them. They were agents or brokers or like just not real buyers in my world.
Right.
So it's about that pain and pleasure. Now, I also wrote down whatever they say. So you take the time, and this is where you spend the time. And this is really about the ready part. So I also, during this section, one of my favorite questions that's not on this sheet, yet you can add to it, is in a perfect world, when would you be moving into this property? And then I'll give them grace, because sometimes I think people think for an agent to send them value that they have to say right now. And so I give them the opportunity to tell me the truth. And how you can do that is, Jeff, in a perfect world, realistically, when would you be moving into this beautiful home and this new lifestyle? Would it be like, Denise, I got to get in the car with you right now and buy in the next 30 days? Or is it really something that 2 years from now is the perfect time for you? And what's interesting is they tell you.
Right.
And yeah, it's so cool. I work with buyers all throughout that process, whether it's now or 2 years from now. Where are you at? And then they just tell you the truth. Okay. So, and then whatever they say, the wrap up line, because is really this: I'm so glad we're talking. That's exactly why people work with me. I'm so glad we're talking. That's exactly why people work with me. Now, what do we do? So this is on the motivation section. What are we doing when we wrap up motivation with that?
We set that in their heads that they're going to work with you.
Yeah.
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 And that's that. And even you use that little bit of inflection. That's why people work with me.
Yeah.
So that you get that truthfully set in their head. Mm-hmm.
And it's other things too. I'm so glad we're talking. That's exactly why people buy property in Durango. I'm so glad we're talking. That's exactly why people choose new homes. I'm so glad we're talking. That's exactly why people buy existing homes, buy like whatever it is that they say that they truly desire to do. If it's possible in your city, then you tie it down and make them feel good about it. And this is about rapport. They are taken, in most cases, their single largest purchase in their life. And they're trusting you. And in a 10, 15-minute conversation, you're saying, trust me, I've got you. And they don't know who you are. So people want to link good feelings with their decisions. And it also allows them to be heard. Karen heard who I am. Jeff heard what my situation is, the good and the bad. And he's said, I heard you, and I have affirmed that I'm making a great decision.
Right.
Yeah. Now on this section, if we did not get it right, they'll tell us.
Right.
When we say that, if we missed something or they didn't share it, they'll say, and oh, let me tell you one more. Like they want to tell you everything. So I think this is one of the most important parts of working with buyers is this. Now, the second part of pre-qualifying is about the ability. So that was the ready part, right? They're ready. The second part is ability. And this really comes down to just a couple questions, right? Like it's now, will you be paying cash for the property or do you need to get a loan? Have you already talked with a lender? And would you like to talk with my local lender that we highly recommend to get a second opinion?
Right.
It's really pretty simple, right? And then we don't take them out unless they get pre-qualified or show us that proof of funds. Okay. Right. Now the third one is willing. And the best way to find out is willing is all we need to do now is set an appointment. Would you like to go looking this Thursday, or would next Thursday be better? Now, by the way, why do we always show buyers during the week versus the weekend?
Because we want to train them that we are professionals and we work 9 to 5.
That's a good reason for us personally, right? Yeah.
Right.
Can you think of a great reason to only show buyers during the week for their benefit?
No, because a lot of our buyers come in on the weekend. So we have weekend buyers because it's a tourist town. So people come.
And I understand that, so this was something because I worked in a tourist town for all those years, Karen, right?
Right.
So what I started doing was I'd say, hey, Karen, can I share with you a benefit of looking at property during the week?
Sure.
Oh, this is so cool. Well, while we have a 2-month supply of homes for sale in our area, you probably realize that the best of the best go really fast, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so Saturday morning, all those homes are going to get shown, and Saturday afternoon. And so what I like to do, because the best of the best do go fast, and even though the others will just stay on the market, and you want the best of the best. So I get my buyers in there Thursday. So if you like it, we write an offer on Friday, and it's gone before all the Saturday buyers of the competition. So
Yeah.
is there any opportunity for you to come in early so you don't have to compete with all of them?
Ah, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And what we find is at least 50%, they go, oh yeah, I just thought agents only worked on the weekends.
Well, and maybe we're training them to that. It's true. So, yeah, that's great.
So it's all about the benefit to the buyer. And I believe that in my heart, maybe it's like what I had to do because I didn't want to work on the weekends. And yet it worked a lot. So, all right, cool. All right. So we pre-qualify. And the willing part is if they're not willing to set an appointment, that tells us something, right?
Right.
So if they're not willing to set an appointment, the question that we follow up with is, I totally understand. I'm curious what's stopping you.
Right.
And what we're looking for there, is it a situation that we cannot change, or is it an objection we can overcome? And we're going to talk about objections a little bit later.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, very good. So let's go ahead and take a look in your workbooks at page 11, the take action section. And at the end of every section, and this is one of our longer sections, and then they go a little bit faster. Yet
Okay.
I'd like you to take a look at these and let's just take some notes for yourself. So the take action section, Christine, the section overview, the very first one is we want to make sure that we're using either Keller Williams technology or a lead follow-up system of some sort. And that includes following up with it every single day, right? Like Monday through Friday, or the days that you work, that we're not missing the leads. Yet if they're not willing to do the lead follow-up script, or pardon me, the pre-qualification script, that tells us something and where to put them into our system. I'm curious, what's stopping you? Oh, well, I need to wait for this bonus at the end of the year, or I want to get my tax return money, or whatever it is, right? We want to focus on 3 to 4 lead sources. And we talked about lead sources today, and it may be time to get rid of some and convert to others. We talked about listing being the #1 lead source for buyers. We talked about updating your database and looking for a database of buyers who have high speed to trust and referrals, agents, any local community leaders. We always want to capture that contact information. To me, that's part of the pre-qualification. If they won't give you contact information, I'm not sure we can do anything with them, right?
Yeah.
And we might
if they won't give you contact information, you should just say goodbye, because they're really not going to work with you. Yeah,
exactly. Connect, looking for that pre-qualification, and then, mastering the scripts and objections and closing for the appointment. And it really is all simply right there in that pre-qualification, because what happens is when you do a great job on the motivation part, the rest is just checking boxes.
right.
And this is where they'll tell you everything you need to know. You might just have to go through 59 to find the one. And we got to go through them fast, right?
Right.
So let's stop right here on this section. And of course, number 7, at the end of each day, track your numbers. So we know, do I need 50, 60 to find a closing? Do I need 90 to find a closing? It is what it is, yet the goal doesn't change. What we do to get there may have to change.
Right.
So what are some ahas on this very first section before we move on to our next one?
So on the there were some interesting, and it's so hard being the only, I got to tell you. And
You're
I love you,
awesome, Karen.
Denise.
You're doing great. Hey, this is like a one-on-one coaching. This is
It
fun.
really is. So, so back to the farming realtors and, top 100, but also here really is the art of the initial, questioning of them. I had a buyer I showed the other day and he said, my mom says you should never buy the first house that you see. And I said, well, if I've done my job correctly, that's your right house. So, it really is that if you ask 500 questions, you can show them 5 houses. If you ask them five questions, you get to show them 500 houses. So you're very right in your qualification of them. Yeah.
And the truth is we could be done today and this could revolutionize an agent's business.
Yeah.
It's simply asking every single person these questions, right?
Right.
Denise,
Awesome.
Denise,
Anything to add? Yes, sir.
one of my takeaways is a reminder when there seems to be a shortage of listings or there's a shortage of buyers, I think the tendency is to start doing a bigger variety of lead generation strategies. Okay, now I'm going to go work FSBOs. Whoop, nope, now I'm going to go work expireds, right? We're going to go broad in more strategies, figuring that there's just a bigger pool if we go that way. I think, especially for somebody like Karen or a longtime agent, going deeper into your database and the things that have been successful. I always say, look at your top 2 or 3. This says 3 or 4. I always say 2 or 3 are going to probably bring 75, 80% of your business. If you then want to grow into a good social media campaign platform, right? I can try to grow into that, but if I've never done it, I'm probably not going to be an expert at the start. Nor are people thinking of me as the real estate expert online, whereas they may be thinking of somebody else as the real estate expert online because that's what they do. Right? But Karen's got 27-year relationships with some of these people.
Mhm.
Or George and Jan, these good friends of ours, I think they've bought and sold 7 things with us because they keep moving away and moving back and moving away and moving back. And I need bigger, I need smaller. All these things have happened. They're great friends. We love spending time with them. Such advocates for her business, right?
Yeah.
They are truly the raving fan. So I think
George says I'd have to die before he worked with somebody else. So that's a raving fan. So.
Right. And so going deeper with those people, spending more time with them, because the more I can be top of mind inside my database, the more opportunities will come to me.
It's true. I mean, they're there and it's about asking the questions. And I think of the words care and candor, right?
Mhm.
Listening to what they say, caring about what their situation is, and then telling them the truth about the market. Here's the truth about the market. That first house, if I did my job, is the best house for you.
Right.
So do you want me to show bad houses first?
Right. Well, we can go and look at all the other houses that are on the market and you might lose this one, or we can go and make the offer on this one because it checks all your boxes. And you can know that we did our due diligence and found the right house.
So then, and if they share that with you, how many homes did your mom say you need to look at? And then I'll show you that many and then show you the best one last.
Right. Exactly. The one I know checks out your boxes. I'll show it to you last.
There was a buyer back when the market was turning who ended up buying a lot of investment properties from me in the White Mountains. And he said, well, I'm looking for a deal. These aren't deals. I said, well, they're priced as deals. They'll be gone this week, but I want a deal. And I said, okay, what's a deal to you? He goes, 25% below the market price. I said, now below the list price or the market price? Well, what do you mean? So we discussed what that meant, right? And then I said, well, heck, here's what I know. he was from Las Vegas. We're going to go find you. I'm going to show you a bunch of houses today because you said you're a buyer. He goes, yep, I'm a buyer. I'm an investor. I said, well, we're going to go show you a bunch of houses. The difference is I'm not going to have you pick one. I'm going to have you pick 4, and I'm going to have you put them in order of the one that you want. And we can make an offer at 20% below the list price. And 1 out of 4 will say yes. Yet you can't come back here every week and look at 10 homes. Let's pick 4 today. And in 24 hours, if you didn't get that one, we'll go to offer number 2. We'll go to offer number 3. And he goes, oh, okay.
Did he get his 25% off one?
He did. He got 18% off the first one. And then that speed to trust started to show up where you could say, hey, I've got one coming up. We don't want it to go on the market. Let's go after it. Yet it's asking them, how do you want to, what is it you're truly looking to do? I can plan for you if you'll tell me the truth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, there's ways that you can get to it, yet it's digging
Yeah.
for it.
Our market was such at one point that if you put a house under contract, by the time you closed on it, let's say you had a 45-day close or something like that, by the time you closed on it, it had already gone up in value $20,000. I mean, maybe more depending on the price range. It could have gone up 50 if it was $1 million house. So the market was, so anybody who hesitated, let's say,
They do.
could plan on spending more for the same house later.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah.
So it's really about knowing and understanding the market.
Mhm.
And then digging deep, like, what's the goal? What's the goal? What's the goal? Oh, here's the plan.
Right.
Now that I know what your goal is, I can get you the plan. Now, the next section, let's take a look at this next section, Christine, section number 2 of the 7-step buyer cycle. We'll dig into this section. It's really about having, it's the appointment itself. And it's getting ready to prepare for that appointment through the buyer consultation. Now, we have a lot of steps in here, and I'll fly through some of these slides. And yet the truth is that I still believe that most of it happens in that pre-qualification. Depending on where your market is and where you might be listening to this from across the country, you may need to sit down and work with a buyer in advance, either online like Zoom or Facebook, or a phone like Facebook Live, or not Facebook Live, pardon me, like the video, or you may need to do it by phone, and sometimes you do it in person. Yet it's the consultation, right? It's the consultation itself. And there's a couple things that you want to share during that consultation. The first one is your value proposition. And your value proposition is going to differ based upon who you are. I think we have a couple slides for this, Christine. We'll put this up and all of you can follow along on page 13. And your value proposition is really about why should they use you? And I think you find out what's important to them in that pre-qualification and the motivation. And then you address what's important to them, not what you do for everybody. And I think that's a big difference in a skill-based market. A new agent might not feel like they have the skill to help, like to understand that I have different skills to help different people. And I'll push back on that for a moment, because I picture this: if you have your favorite relative or your best friend and you're sitting at the kitchen table and they're sitting across from you, you would dig in and you'd say, what's going on? What's going on? What's your goal? Oh my gosh, here's what we're going to do. And I think every single person who has a real estate license can do that. Your state gave you a license, right? And said that you can do that legally. And I believe that you have that ability. And there's something, that says stranger, and I can't tell you what to do. Well, I'm going to say, ask enough questions. You're smart. You're going to come up with a solution. And so for value proposition, you can share with them your stats and things like that of what you do well. More importantly, though, I think it's giving them the one thing that they need based upon their goals.
Right.
You can also put together a buyer's guide. This is something you send to buyers in advance. Many title companies and lenders will put one together for you. You can do one through Command. Really, it's about gathering information. It's about gathering information and, making sure that it's customized to them. It can include checklists and things like that. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Christine. It's also about your preparation, right? So whenever you're working with a buyer and there's things that you want to make sure that you do. So based upon what they said that was important to them, you may need to understand the market. So we do comparable market analysis for sellers when we go on that appointment. Are we doing a CMA before we go on a buyer appointment? Are we able to say, so let's pull this down for a minute, Christine. So let's talk to some of the challenges that we heard at the beginning. Buyers are hearing about these pocket markets and limited pricing and buyer intolerance to the market. Well, this is where that all may be true for other buyers. Right here is where we give them what they need to know for them. And I like to think of it this way. There's 3 parts to understanding the market. Now there's it's like a funnel. And I call it like that big funnel, it goes in up here. Oh, you can't see that on screen. It goes in up here and we funnel it down to here. So I like to think of it this way. We have what we call the enormity of the market. Hey, you hear what's going on across the country with real estate. What are you hearing? And they actually tell you, I hear there's opportunity. I hear the sky is falling and everywhere in between.
Right.
Yet we want to find out what they're hearing so we can address it. Now here in my state, so we get a little narrower, here in my state, here's what's happening. And I think this is where you want to know your state numbers. We have a lot of businesses coming to Arizona. There's a bent up, we have 14,000 buyers that still need to buy a home that weren't able to buy a home last year because of the competition that are now in the market. So there is still competition, whatever that state number is, there were this many jobs created and we don't have workers for those jobs. So whatever that is, so you talk about the big, the state, and now you're going to talk about your city. So you're going to talk about the city, there's only a 2-month supply of homes for sale, meaning if in 60 days, not a new listing came up and a seller said, I'm willing to sell, we'd be out of inventory.
Right.
And by the way, a normal market is 90 to 120 days. They call that stable. So maybe we'll be there later this year. Maybe we won't, yet that's where we're at right now. So here we went from here, here. Now this is where I think and we talk in this on this page, know your scripts and your materials, communication techniques that build rapport. I think telling the truth builds rapport.
I do too.
Yeah, I think showing them a CMA builds rapport.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I would think, showing somebody, okay, so Mrs. Buyer, we are looking for a home in the $500,000 range. And you would like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and you don't want a home that needs much work. Let's take a look at the last 90 days of sales so you can see homes that sold that didn't need much work and sold around the 500 mark. Look, they were 1,200 square feet.
Right.
And you're telling me you want 1,600 square feet. So did you want to go up in price or go down in square footage or maybe go further out?
Right.
I think there's a lot of value too with giving them options instead of saying, what I hear around here is people say, well, that's a 5-year ago price, or that's a 10-year ago price for what you're looking for. Instead, I think it's so much better to say, we can get to what you're after. That's at a different price. We can also come down in square footage, or distance to Durango does determine value in the market. And so therefore, if we push out some 20 minutes and we're in Bayfield instead of Durango, you're still going to get to utilize Durango and all the fun things that you do here. But you end up living about 20 minutes away.
Yeah.
And we can still get you what you want. Yep.
This last one, number 5, says be a decision facilitator. So with the conversation we're having right now, what does it mean to be a decision facilitator?
Well, I would assume that being a decision facilitator is a little bit like being a MAPS coach. And that is that you're guiding somebody to make their own decision via asking them questions and then asking another question and then helping them to nail down what it is that they are really wanting, and then saying, now you're sure that's what you want, and that's always how my MAPS coach treats me. We have that full conversation, and I make a plan. It's my plan. It's not her plan. It's my plan, and I make that plan, and that's helping somebody facilitate a decision.
Yeah, and in this, it's a perfect definition of what that is, because they're going to make a decision. We want to be there with them when they make it.
Mhm.
Let's lay it out on the table. So you said you wanted this, you said you wanted this. Now that you have and know and understand this market, and by the way, probably better than most agents, okay, Mrs. Buyer, what would you like to do? Now, the ones who are ready, able, and willing will make a decision.
Right.
The ones who aren't won't.
Right.
And that becomes one of your 59 no's.
Right. Unfortunately, because you spent more time on them than you might have on the no that would have come quicker. But yeah.
And maybe. So what I would say is that all of this is done pre-work. This is your buyer consultation. It's done before you take a buyer out. And it might be so far as to do a Zoom or send them information and call them back with it. Hey, based upon what you're looking for, we either have to go outside the area or go up in price. What would you like to do? What
Right.
information do you need to see to make sure you're making that decision? Well, you might even do this. We're not going to go look at homes in person. Maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you these 5 properties that just sold, and we're going to look at them on Zoom together. Can you
Okay.
see how this had blank, this had blank? Oh, this one's close to the power plant, or this one backs up to the school, or whatever. This one doesn't have a paved driveway and no fencing and has mobile homes next door, whatever it is. Like, and now you're starting to educate them, right?
Right. And to show your expertise as well, and seeing and having known about the properties. And that's why touring properties is so important, so that you've
Yes.
seen things and know them. Mhm.
Yes. See, I think now we're hitting on all of this. So we're not putting people in the car, or we're not showing them properties unless we get them to this point of decision. Now, it
Mhm.
can still change, right? So let's
Right.
turn to the next, so action, if we look at page 15, our section overview, thanks, Christine, have an appointment system in place to ensure a successful consultation, right? And of course, we do work to get that buyer representation signed. Each state is a little bit different on how that works, yet get something that says that they agree to work with you, right?
Right.
Go ahead and get that person to agree. Also, have materials prepared in advance. That could be anything. Christine, we have someone in the waiting room. If you'll help them out. Have those materials prepared in advance, a buyer's guide, a value proposition, and a lot of that value can be an updated comparable market analysis, so that they can also see what the market is doing. Now, here's the other thing. As we go into the next section, which is the actual consultation itself and then the appointment, when they have that knowledge, you can refer back to that knowledge now on this house, which is very different than they like the house, have high expectations. They're all up here and you got to get them down to here. So instead, you've already brought them down to here. And now you're just, your new funnel is only for this house or this purchase,
Mhm.
which is a lot less work to do once you got them to here.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a big part of it. The consultation itself, let's turn to page 17, focus on the customer experience. I'm going to slide through these somewhat fast. On this in your workbook, you can write down set expectations. Set expectations. And some of the expectations that you have is making sure they have, their pre-qualification letter or proof of funds, right? It could also be that, let's say that you're out showing property, and if at any point I'm showing you the wrong properties, let's go back to the office and reorganize and show you the right properties. Just because I have a list of what I'm going to show you today, doesn't mean that I need to show you these wrong properties. Like, I think that's a big expectation, right?
Yep,
Mhm.
yep. It would be nice to have a long list. I haven't had more than 3 properties to show somebody in a long time.
I got it.
Yeah.
And yet maybe we need to up the price range, or maybe we need to go further out.
Right.
Right, because I want to make sure we show you at least one house today that meets your criteria that you'd be willing to buy.
Right.
And if I'm off track, let's not waste your time. Service, whatever it is that we said that we're going to do for them, we do it. And that's really what service is about, right?
Right.
Satisfy their needs. And that's what you write in the blank here. Satisfy their needs. Now, I may look at this a little bit different than other agents. My definition of a buyer lead is somebody who's going to buy this week. I might work with you for a couple of weeks because you haven't got here yet. And yet, really, you're going to buy on the appointment I take you out on.
Right.
So to me, satisfy their needs is sell them a house.
Right.
Now that might be something different to someone else, right? And then surpass their expectations. And I like to put here, I'm actually borrowing from Delta, the airline, right? So I'm flying a lot right now. And this is really interesting. A couple of weeks ago, Delta, they have in Atlanta, a big museum of flying. And it's really cool if you ever get to go by it. And they truly pride themselves on their customer service. So they like to find ways to, quote, surprise and delight their customers. Surprise and delight their customers. Now I'll share with you, I'm traveling a lot for Bold. I'm on planes a lot this year, and I've had a lot of canceled flights. Maybe I'm not flying a certain airline unless I have to right now. And I switched over to Delta. And I do have quite a few points racked up. I get off the plane in Atlanta, and there is a placard, and it says Denise Meyer on it. And I said, like, literally right when you step off the plane onto the offboarding thing. And I said, I'm Denise Meyer. And the gentleman, his name was Kevin, and he had his big orange vest on. He said, Miss Denise, I am here to take you in the Delta Porsche on the tarmac to your next plane. And I went, all right. And he goes, let me carry your carry-on. We went down those steps onto the tarmac. We took pictures with the Porsche, and he drove me the 3 minutes to my next plane. And I said, Kevin, I know I didn't hit the miles to have this. Well, what did I do to deserve this? He goes, Miss Denise, you have become a great customer of ours, and I wanted to surprise and delight you today.
Wow. Oh, that's fabulous.
And I'm going to tell you, I'm sitting on that tarmac because the plane that he put me on left an hour late. I didn't care. And I still have a smile on my face. I took pictures. I sent it to delta.com, to their Facebook page, and said, what a pleasure it was. Thank you, Delta. Thank you, Kevin. And that was even after all my flights that day were late.
Wow.
Yep.
So we have to surpass their expectations and find ways to surprise and delight them. And, so things that I can think of is, sending them a basket at their hotel if they're in town looking of, maybe their favorite treats and water and snacks for midnight. Perhaps it's bringing them a tape measure with your name on it and says, hey, this way you can measure anything you want today while we're looking, and then you can keep that. Sometimes it's the little things and sometimes it's a big gesture. Yet how can we find ways to surprise and delight our buyers? Another way, like if you are working, I can think back to a customer, an agent we were working with, and they had some buyers in town that two daughters played volleyball, and they were very nervous about switching schools. Well, this agent knew the volleyball coach and called the volleyball coach, and they said, hey, we're actually having practice on Thursday at whatever time. So during the showing appointment, that agent took the buyers and said, hey, would you guys like to see the volleyball where you practice? Well, those two daughters were welcomed, and now they felt comfortable moving to the area. And that would be an example of surprise and delight that had you not asked questions of what's important and where's the pain, we may not have been able to surpass expectations. So thinking of what's specific to them. And then I would just say sustain the relationship. Wherever they're at in that process, that we're sustaining the relationship. Now, Christine, let's go ahead and put up the slide, conduct the buyer consultation, the half and half slide. So a couple thoughts when we are in this buyer consultation, it's important that we realize that we're talking about 50% of the time. And then who's talking the other 50% of the time?
The buyer.
They are.
That's right.
Right. And really, they should be talking 75% of the time.
Probably. I mean, we do have to deliver information, and then we have to check in with them by asking questions and sharing that with them. So here's what I'd like to do. Turn to page 19, and it says buyer strategies to win the bid. And this is where I think that we have to update our skills in this market. And we're going to mastermind here for a moment as well on this, on buyer strategies to win the market. Now, 6 months ago, when I wrote this course, well, the KW course, and modified it for Zoom, we were putting different strategies down 6 months ago for buyers. And I think today we have to change that strategy because, the buyer does have an intolerance to the price, to the condition, to what's out there, right?
Right.
And yet, as you said, in this market, there's still low inventory.
Right.
So let's break this up, and I don't have all the answers here. This is where we're going to mastermind together strategies to win the bid. And part of it could be strategies. I'm also going to say, let's call it strategies to get them to write the bid. So it can be a little of both, right?
Okay.
All right. And we'll just mastermind here. If it pops to your mind, write it down. There's no right or wrong answers. They're all great answers, right? So who'd like to start us off?
So Denise, I believe that we do have longer days on the market. So we still have limited inventory, but we're seeing some motivation on the seller's part, some better conversations by agents listing properties about you probably won't have 11 offers and 4 of them cash and 10% over, right? I think there's a better conversation. And so I think for the buyer, the opportunity is there again for them to buy a house, right, with a motivated seller instead of a seller who's like, I don't care. You need to waive everything or we're not playing.
Yeah.
Right. I think that we can have the expectation that true inspection items will be addressed, right? That the seller may have enough motivation. They may have actually had their property on the market for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. And now they're like, I guess we really did miss the market like we've heard. And now there's some motivation on their part. I'm not saying that we're going to get way under, because the other thing I think from the buyer strategy to win the bid is we also have to have good conversation with the buyer about the fact that we're still at about 98 to 99% list to sales price ratio. They're not going to buy a house at 80% a list.
And so that's where, you know, this is a powerful conversation. That's where you share the CMA with the sales before you ever take them out the door. And you're
Right.
giving it to them. Did you want to be the one who's still paying over, paying list, or paying 2% below? You choose.
Right,
Where would you like to start?
right. Well,
And they go,
and
well, I was thinking 20%. Oh,
Right. I can't find that on this sheet.
right.
yeah, that's not gonna work. So,
Well, and the other issue that I find or that I address with people often is, you know, for some reason, now that the market isn't moving quite as quickly, they think they can just lollygag on things. And it's like, if you wait around, somebody else will come onto the playing field. And then we're in a bidding situation. So if you really like this house, let's go ahead and get an offer in on it, because we don't want somebody coming into our playing field and mucking it up.
Yeah.
Another issue is another thing that I do is I call the other agent in getting an offer accepted to win the bid. And I ask them all the questions. What is a good closing time for your seller? What, you know, are they going to be out of town at any point? You know, what are their hot spots? What are they sensitive about? You know, so that when I craft a contract, I can make it so that it looks like it's a win-win contract to both parties. And a lot of times, you know, you can even beat out a cash offer if you have the win-win contract.
Yeah, I
So-
think that's a big thing, is call the agent. I was thinking, so the three things I've heard so far, and I like these a lot, are show the motivated sellers. And that's where in that appointment, if we go back and say, okay, you know, Karen, I can see that on your app and on Zillow that there's actually 23 properties that show up when you do a search. I'd like to show you active right here online on this Zoom. I'm going to show you my portal into the multiple listing service, and we're going to go through it together. You said you wanted this many bedrooms. You said you wanted this, and let's draw a circle around. And as you can see, there are actually 12, not 23. And now of the 12, let's take a look. You said you wanted a minimum this much square footage. Let's pop that in. Oop, that just went off. And now we're down to 8. Did you
Right.
want me to so now, and then now you've got it down to 6. And now look at this one. This one is 600 a square foot and everything else is 500 a square foot. And the ones that sold are 400 a square foot. So did you want to see the ones that are priced well, the motivated sellers, or did you want to go get frustrated on the ones who are overpriced?
Right, right. Yeah, I can see that.
And so now before you've even taken them out the door online, you've narrowed that 23 in their mind that was available down to 6 or maybe down to 3. And now you can actually, on each house that you show, you could say, here's the comparable market analysis. You're smart. Where would you sell it if you were this seller?
Right, right. You're looking at the houses that have sold. Don't you think that they're going to want to be priced or sell somewhere inside of here too? Because they have the same information.
They do.
So,
So
right.
now we're educating along the way. Where would you price this home? Now, do you want to keep this home on your list or not?
Yeah.
Compared to the others, how does it apply? Calling the agent, finding out everything that's important. Showing that CMA multiple times throughout the process is super important. Buyer strategies to win the bid. The other thing I think is having the agent, or pardon me, the lender and the buyer and the agent on a group phone call.
Oh, wow.
And not the other agent. I'm talking about you,
Oh,
the showing
me.
agent.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say, I wouldn't put my buyer into that kind of experience, but yeah.
No,
in bigger
No, I
cities,
meant like you, the
Yeah.
lender and the buyer all on a call. And like in advance, before you go shopping, literally you say, let's put a strategy together.
Right,
Because third-party endorsements or asking the other person, their only solidifies that you guys are working together as a team. right? So like questions I might ask that lender is, hey, in the last 10 transactions you guys have loans you have had in this area, how many are offering buyer incentives? How many are offering are paying for all the seller incentives? Or what are you seeing as an average? Because that's probably what we can get accepted over here.
Right.
Oh, half of them aren't? All right, so that's good to know.
Right.
So now you're taking those expectations and narrowing them down. Mrs. Linder, how many homes do you see that are going under contract below the list price? So see, now we're taking those concerns from the buyer that they had and getting a third party endorsement, and you're putting a plan in place together.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then I thought of the buyer, here was a number that I heard. I don't know if you have Guild. Oh, I know you guys have Guild Mortgage in Colorado.
We
We
do.
do in Colorado, yeah.
Yeah, because one of my best friends moved from Denver with Guild down to here to Arizona. So from Guild, this was from Guild in New York. She made on their national number, like their national call, what they heard, their number showed was that in 2021, 25% of buyers were priced out of the market or could not get a home based upon the conditions.
Wow.
So they either needed buyer assistance of some sort with down payment or with the closing cost or, anything like that, or they didn't have that extra cash to bring to the closing to buy the property.
Right.
So that was interesting. So those buyers are back into the market. And then on the opposite side today, 25% of the buyers have left the market because, they're mentally checked out or have that.
Right.
Yet
a
if we
fear
go
of buying or what have you. Mm-hmm.
So we have, thank you, Karen, for letting me know. So we have to go back to, okay, we have to switch our skill set and talk with our lenders and talk with our buyers on that group call of what types of properties do we need to go find? And then you can actually talk to the agent and say, hey, my buyer needs this. Will your seller consider it?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to do it. Because then you soften it up and the seller's ready for that to be coming on the offer when it shows up. It's not a surprise to them.
It's not a surprise to them.
Yeah.
All right. What else? Anything else? Buyer strategies to win the bid or get them to place the bid.
To get the buyers to place the bid. Well, I think Jeff and I had a conversation this weekend, and I think that really, we had a day last week. We have I have 3 counties in my in what I consider my purview, right? So I have 3 counties in my purview, and that's what comes up on my MLS for me. And there were 7 listings in a 3-day period, one day last week.
New or total?
Total.
New.
Sorry, total new, right? Of
Total
all categories in all 3 counties.
Right.
Right. So our
There were
entire market,
7
listings.
So we are once again going backwards on listings because more went under than that, you know what I'm saying? So we are starting to slip back into that seller market. So
have you guys taken the class with Denny Grimes or heard it elsewhere called Shadow Sellers?
Have not. Know who Denny is, but have not taken it.
All right. I do have his notes. Brilliant. He talks about shadow sellers. There are the sellers that are on the market, and it's a little outside of this class right now, yet I think it still makes sense. You've got the sellers who are actively on the market. That's the 7. And there's a belief that there's the same number that is holding back.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where it comes back to your database, like they're sitting, watching, waiting to see what's going to happen. Yet if the situation were right, they would still sell the house. And so this is where we go back to database, and we have to have, like, quote, that dossier, knowing in the next 2 years, what's the plan? so that when you're taking a buyer out, you're not only showing them the active MLS, you're showing them from your database, you're showing them from old expireds, you're showing them from old for sale by owners, withdrawals, canceled. So it's not just the active MLS, it's the shadow sellers as well who are sitting back here behind you, like watching, waiting, and yet would still sell.
Right, because I think, Denise, something that we run into, obviously, and so as an example, last week at team meeting, we had 6 new listings pitched and we had 21 listings sold. This was for the past 2-week period for our company, right? And so we looked like we were almost recovering with some inventory in June and into July. And now we're going the other direction again. We're getting to less and less and less inventory. And so to your point, those sellers will sell if you can find them something to buy. They're afraid of being homeless.
Right.
Yes.
Which is a very real fear.
Yeah.
What we found, and I don't know how your market's been, but what we found is that when this inventory became so constrained, people stopped moving around within our market. So the people that were like, well, the kids are gone, so we could use a smaller house. They're just still hanging out in the bigger house.
Right.
Or we wanted to move over to this school district because we'd actually like to have the kids in that school district. We're just driving them. We're staying in, just putting our house, because we did go out and look and we couldn't find anything. So we didn't bring our home to market.
Right.
But I think so oftentimes that shadow inventory of sellers is, if you can find them what they need, they'll come to market with that house, but we got to go find their house first. And we've got a couple of agents that I think are, I think they're working round the clock, burning the candle at both ends, but they're actually trying to actually do exactly that.
Yeah, I think that like the memory game. Remember those tiles when we were kids, and it had like Bell, dog, and you turn them all over, and you're looking to try to match the 2 tiles.
Yep.
And I think of buyers and sellers like that. Like literally, you got 20 shadow sellers over here, and your database, and you know where they live, right? And then you got the buyers over here. And in the morning, you say, okay, who's my hottest buyer? And I look over here and dog, nope. Tile, nope. Oh, house, put them together. That's the first 2 calls I make. Hey, Karen, I've got a buyer who needs your house. In a perfect world, if I sold it in the next 30 days, would that be okay with you? Oh, all right. Who has a home like yours? I need your house.
Right. That is the good question. Or the question is, sure, Denise, I'd be willing to sell it, but where am I going? And then you have another tile to try and figure out.
That's a great visualization, that idea of that tile game. So many of us have played that, and that's so true.
Right.
Yeah. And then you go, who's my hottest seller? And you go look over here, and it's either buyer or look for an agent in the market who has it. Like, so, and then they come onto the market as the me deal, right? Like sold right away.
Right.
All right, perfect. So let's go ahead wherever we're at in our slides, Christine. So we had to come up with these strategies to help the buyers get under contract. And even in a hot market or a market that's changing, those strategies, when we have these conversations in advance, for those of you who've taken Bold, what you focus on expands. So when we have these conversations with the buyers in advance, and if they're still hanging in there and answering it, they're ready, able, and willing.
Right.
And they trust you, their speed to trust. So now when you do show them the first house, they can feel comfortable buying it because we've answered those questions up front. Yet we're only taking out the ones who are ready,
Right.
Okay, so let's take a look at the appointment itself. Now, Christine, we have set the stage here. We've done all of this really. Let's go ahead and move forward to recognize the classic buying signals. Page 23 in your workbooks. So here's what I'd like to do with this. Now, when we're showing a property, I am a huge proponent of tell them what you're going to do, do it, and then tell them what you did. All right. So I always say, here's what we're going to do. And I tell them about it. This is when we finished the buyer consultation. Here's what's going to happen next. We're going to go see these homes. And then when you do the property, I said, remember when I said we were going to do this? Well, here we go. And then at the end of all that appointment, you tell them what you did today and you confirmed what you did. So as an example, let's go ahead and pull this down. So we have pre-qualified the buyer. All right, we've pre-qualified the buyer and they answered the questions correctly. So now we got them to that part. We've worked through those 59 people to find our one who answered all the questions. We did a buyer consultation with them and what they said they desire. We now know what they're going to go see. So, and again, this is where that care and candor shows up. In that pre-consultation, I do believe it's super important to show them the homes on the computer before you go see property, because we have to take their idea of there's 23 to really there's 12 to really there's 8 to really there's only like 3.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
And when we get back to the days where we have that many, I mean, we really are not at that situation.
Or we have 2.
Right.
Or we have 1. And so what we say is now, Karen or Jeff, is it more important to get a home in this market, or is it more important to get the right home for you?
Right.
And here's the deal. They'll tell you the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they say it's got to be the right home, then I'll say, gosh, I don't want to take you out until I actually have a home to show you.
Right. The right home to show you.
So we can do this appointment online here, and that builds speed to trust. So when you say, I need you in the door, or I'm going to do it through a walkthrough with our camera, and you better be ready to buy, they trust that it's that it's a powerful one.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So then before you go out, you can say, so now you've shown them online, right? You've shown them everything online that there actually is. And you say, so Karen, so Jeff, my goal is to show you the best of the best and get you into a property. Now, as you can see, when you get here tomorrow, we're going to have 2 properties to look at. So unless you want to go see things that are out of the area, did you want to do that?
No, not at this point.
Okay. Or want to go up in price range?
And we could go up in price range. It would have to be something that we talked about. The house would have to be worth it.
All right. So you could possibly go up in price. So as you can see, these are the only 2, and one of them you can already see is better than the other one, right?
Right.
Okay. So when we go looking, we're going to be seeing the best of the best. And as you can see, there really aren't 23. There's like 2 or 3. And unless you want to go see all the rest, these will go tomorrow. These will go over the weekend.
Okay.
Okay. Now, before we meet tomorrow, now, if a client said that I might go up, I'd say, should we look at MLS to see what that looks like?
Right. And that's exactly what I do, as I try and take them up 50, 75,000 to get them into the next category of stuff and see if there was a house or 2 in that category. And I would be praying when I brought that up that there was a house.
Right. And that may be, and that's part of this. It's not there.
Right.
Okay. So we go down to this. Okay. Now, and you say, now on top of all of that, I'm going to take a look through my client database, and I'm going to see overnight if there's anything else that I'm missing that might be available. And that's where you could go to your database on social media and say, I have a buyer coming in for the weekend. This is what they're looking for. Go to your closed Facebook page with your agents and ask what they're looking for. So this is all these places that you can find those off-market properties and bring value. Now, when you do show the house, I say up front, okay, Karen, we're super excited. now you're meeting for the day of the appointment, right, Jeff? And you go, Jeff, I'm so excited to show you these 2 homes today. And as we discussed, these are the best of the best. Now, did you see anything else overnight that you wanted me to take a look at? And they found that other one on that site online, and they want you to look it up. And I'm going to look it up before I put them, like before we show the first house. Because if I need to make adjustments to my showing, I want to do it right now.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay, so we capture all that and you go, okay, good. So now we're ready to go. Now, when we go into the first house, I'm always going to ask you to rate the house. Like, and, Jeff, you can have a favorite, and Karen, you can have a favorite. Yeah, you only get to keep 2. You only get to keep 2 on your list. And we got a number of number 1 and number 2. And so at the end of every showing, I'm going to ask you to rate the house. And then I'll ask you if you'd like to keep it on the list.
Right.
Okay. So as
Right.
our market changes and we might be getting more inventory, you may have to narrow that search down from bigger list, or you may not. So
Right.
then we show the house, and let's call it the yellow house. I always name my houses something, might be the barking dog house or the yellow house or whatever it is. And I'll say, okay, now this yellow house, we've only seen one. First question, do you want to keep it on the list?
Right. Is it good enough to keep on the list?
And then,
And then
well,
if
I've
it
only
is-
seen this one.
Right. And then if it is, and we see the next one, I say, okay, is this one better or worse than the last one? How do you rank it? Is it better than that one? So we put it as number 1, or is that one still number 1?
There you
And I
go.
make them make that decision
Yes.
there. Now, the hard thing is we don't drive in the same car anymore. Used to be, we had fabulous conversations on the way, the 20 minutes between houses. I can't wait till we get back to driving people around again, because the opportunity to build rapport with them is so much greater than just
Yes.
the 10 minutes that you're at a house.
And I do understand that. And so, yeah, so those are some of the tools. Now, once you're finished with the showing appointment, you say, now we've seen the best of the best. And unless you'd like to go outside the area, would you consider that? And they go, nope. Or go up in price range. And they go, nope.
Yeah. Then if they go nope and nope, then we're waiting. And I hope
Then
that's
we
okay.
say, so based upon that, which home would you like to write an offer on?
Ah.
And you smile.
Okay. And you don't have to live in it forever. I always say that. If they say, well, this one's not perfect, I would say, well, you don't have to live in it forever. We can get you in there. You can live there for a couple of years. The market will get stronger, and more homes will come on the market.
But you'll be in the market.
right.
And as we discussed when we talked about what the lender was able to do for you, you'll also be at $2,000 a month instead of the $2,800 a month you're currently paying somebody else, so that they
Right,
can
in
pay their
rent.
mortgage, because it's not paying your mortgage, it's paying somebody else's.
Mhm.
Exactly.
I may
Yeah,
go
all
into
kinds of-
I don't mind going into a little bit of pain with renters right now, because they're
Yeah.
paying just extraordinarily high rents.
Yeah, our son pays in rent for a 1-bedroom apartment what our mortgage is. I know.
For
It
a
just
4-bedroom,
blows my mind.
for a 4-bedroom, 2,800 square foot house. Instead, he's
Yeah.
got a
Wow.
1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
It's absolutely, so that's another piece of the buyer strategies, is showing them showing them charts, like showing them in writing what those costs look like. Because I think people hear it, we don't know if they learn by hearing, seeing, or feeling. And
Right.
so like pushing on it and say, what's the pain there? They'll tell you what the pain is. That's the feeling part, the visual or the hearing, yet we want to hit all the senses on that. Okay. All right. Very good. So, in recognizing classic buying signals, yes, we can use affirmative words and facial expressions, asking a lot of questions. And I simply just like to ask them at the end, because I don't know that I'm all that smart and can figure all of it out at one time. Did you
Right.
want to go ahead and buy this house?
Right.
And as Joanne Hutton, agent who was in my market years ago, sold real estate for over 40 years. Her closing line was this: if you like it, I think you ought to buy it.
Yeah.
She'd sell
Just
45,
easy
50 homes a
breezy.
year.
There's
Right,
nothing
just
wrong with
easy.
that. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because their mind is, that's an easy thing for them to say, you know what, you're right.
it
Yeah.
is.
It's no
It
pressure.
is. There's no
Yeah.
pressure. Yeah.
Right.
So we're going to end this chapter on the very last line, and then we're going to take a break. And I see I will be coming back, although we always take a break during this class as well. Let's go ahead and wrap this up, because when we come back, our last hour, what we're going to do is we're going to talk for a brief second about contract. I think our market centers do a great job of that. I'm not here to share how to write a contract. I have a couple thoughts on it. And then we're going to really work with our database at the end on that contract to close section and wrap it all up with best practices for what you're going to take away. Yet let's go ahead in this section of buyer strategies and the buyer appointment itself. So what we're looking for is what we did is not working the way that it used to. So what changes do we have to make based upon what we're doing, what you were doing yesterday, that you'll implement now based upon our conversation that will make a difference? So let's go ahead and I'll let you look over your notes.
Oh,
And then
I think the CMA, really to give them a CMA right up front so they kind of understand, and to go over it with them before you even take them out, based upon the fact that it's they really need to be able to see that and know what market they're looking at properties in. That's a good idea, genius, and it also helps with the offer writing process as well. Yeah. So I think that was really valuable.
smart cookie there, smart cookie. I love it. What else? How about you, Jeff? Anything to add?
No, I actually love that idea. I think that CMAs are an underutilized tool. I mean, I think showing up with a CMA when you're presenting an offer to a seller is always a great idea. CMA with the buyer, not only when they start and we're having this conversation, but maybe it's 2 to 3 weeks before we actually find the house they're going to write on, right? It may be a different environment.
Yeah.
So,
Because people grow into the conversations you have around them.
yes.
The first time they hear something, they
Does
say,
that
I've never
sound
heard
like
of.
something from Bold?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's all Keller Williams, right? Yet the first time they hear something, they go, I've never heard it before. It can't be true. My mom said I can't buy the first house I saw. Second, third time they hear something, they say, I've heard that before. I wonder if it's true. Fourth, fifth time they say, I've heard it before. I'm pretty sure that's true. I wonder if it's true for me. Fifth, sixth, seventh time they say, I know it's true, and I know it's true for me. The 10th time they hear it, they tell their brother, hey, you need to listen to me. Here's what I know.
Right.
So we have to present this information, like Jeff said, maybe 3 weeks before we actually show them the house, and then again at 2 weeks, and then at 1 week, and they get an email with it. And then they're reminded before we go look at the house. And then here's the CMA. What do you think on house number 1, on house number 2? And by the time it's time to write the offer, they go, well, here's what I know. And you're like, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So let's do this, everyone. Let's take a 10-minute break, and super excited to hang out with you guys. This has been a blast today. I'm so excited. And then we're going to wrap it up with some really fun activity. And then I'll be looking for your buyer contracts you get under contract in the next week because of the conversation we had today. I love it.
There you go. All right.
All right. So we'll
See you
be
in a
back at 5 after the hour. 5 after the hour.
Okay.
Thanks,
Okay,
Denise.
awesome. Spending a lot of time. This next section is really about it's about getting the buyer under contract. And I think we've done a pretty good job in this class at already covering this. We do have a slide on this called Make Strong Offers, 7 offer strategies that work. And I do believe we've done a lot of this already. As Karen said, we find out what's important to the seller. We educate and encourage our customers. We do encourage them to make a win-win offer. Now, sometimes maybe you are the agent here that has had a buyer that wanted to be a win for me buyer, and I get that. And so strategies that might work with them are saying, gosh, that may mean that we're going to have to go outside the area to find people who might be willing to take your offer that looks like that. And the other part is that CMA we talked about. So a win-win for them might be if the most that homes are selling for is 5% below list price, maybe they're going to make a 6% below list price offer versus 20% below list price offer, right? Always present the offer immediately. Eliminate contingencies as possible. And I think that's about talking to the other agent, as we discussed, finding out what's important to that seller. And then, of course, helping them overcome fears with all those things that we talked about. So let's go to the next slide.
I think Denise, to that point, and we
Yes.
stress this so much, and especially when we were in a multiple offer situation. But I mean, we've taught it for years as best practices. We live in a small community. You lived in a small community, right? Most of the realtors know each other, right? Or at least they know of each other. I think a couple things. One, the better relationship I have with that co-broke, the more likely my offer is to get accepted. If it's similar to something that somebody's like, I just hate doing things with blah, blah, but Jeff's bringing an offer and Jeff and I have always done really well together, right? Or I've never heard of so-and-so. And I know that when Karen's on the other side of the transaction, she's got her side taken care of, so I don't have to worry about it. I can build, if I have a great relationship, I can have some bias towards my offer if it's similar in all, terms and price and everything else. The other thing I always encourage agents to do is I said, when you place a call to the other agent, the easy question is, other than price, how could I write the offer that it'd be perfect for your seller?
Yes.
Right. And whether that's, she's an old lady, she's lived there a long time, she's moving to her daughter's house, so they're going to have an estate sale. So give me a lot of time. Well, my investor buyer who thinks cash 3 weeks is great, right? There's now a different conversation because I say to him, we're going to be contingency 3 in 3 weeks, and then we're going to give her a month in the house where she knows it's going to close.
Exactly. And, I think these are super important conversations. It's about knowing what's important to both sides. And sometimes it's saying to the buyer, do I have permission to share some of your motivation with the other agent if I think it's going to help us negotiate an offer? So these two things are important to my buyer. Is there a way that we could have a win-win? Now, if we have permission from both sides, then we can have that conversation as long as we're not giving away any information that would harm our buyer's offer, right? So I think getting that in advance is important. Now, closing. Let's say that we are fortunate enough to get our contract under contract. This is page 29. And I do think this part is super important in today's world. Contract to close, helping buyers and understand what their responsibility is, their time period to it. Yet I'm going to focus on the very last one, bulletproof the transaction. So how do we bulletproof, like a bullet's coming and it's like, I think of Mission Impossible and or is it the Matrix, and the bullets come and they're able to dodge the bullet. And there's another one and we dodge the bullet, right? Well, we do that by what I like to call future pacing. Well, obviously we write a strong offer, right? And yet we future pace. So if we are, FHA buyers, gosh, they were almost non-existent last year, right? Just because they were so difficult. Now there are sellers who are willing to pay some of those costs. So if it's an FHA buyer and we have an older home, maybe letting the buyer know, hey, look, we've gotten all your costs paid for by the seller, yet what are we going to do if some repairs show up? let's talk about that in advance before it actually happens. So we're not losing that sale. If they have no funds to do it and the other agent, you actually talk to the other agent and say, hey, that roof looks a little sketchy to me. I'm not looking to be a deal breaker. I'm looking to bulletproof this transaction. What do you know about the roof that maybe I should know? And so now you're making it, so you're putting things in place so it doesn't fall through. Future Pace is really about sharing the things that could happen in advance and then coming up with solutions to them in advance. So the way that I like to start this is, I'm so excited. We got your home under contract. We got you the home of your dreams. And now we've done half the hard work. We got about the other 50% to go through, which is this time period between acceptance to close. Now, I'd like to share what that process looks like and a few of the hurdles that we're going to have to jump through to get there. And based upon this offer and this house, here's some hurdles that I've seen that could happen. When this happens, or if this hurdle shows up, how would you like to handle it? And I think it's super important to ask that question before they get there. Now, the other thing, and then when it shows up, you can say, hey, Karen, do you remember when I said there might be a hurdle? It just showed up. Now, when they show up, I'm going to have you in your notes section here, write down, always offer 3 options. As Jeff, I think you mentioned earlier, people like having options and to make the decision versus us telling them what to do. And by the way, telling them doesn't work. So we like to present options. Now, whenever something goes what I call sideways in a transaction, or you have a hurdle in the transaction, you get to say to the buyer or the seller, for this matter, you have 3 options. Number 1, you can accept the property as it is. Or you could accept the contract as it is, right? Number 2, you can totally reject it if that's an option in that moment, right? Or you could say no, or you say you're not going to do that, or ask the seller to do it. Or number 3, you can negotiate something in between. So based upon your motivation to be in this home specifically, which of those 3 do you think we ought to go for? Now, I'm going to give you another technique here to find find solutions to the problems. Now, this is a Denise trick, and it's a trick. I'm going to say, I don't know if it's a trick, although I found that this works pretty well. All right. Let's say that it's 2 o'clock today and you have a problem and they go, we're just going to back out. Unless you have a time frame in your contract that says that you have to make a decision today, I always say this, oh my gosh, I hear you loud and clear, and that is your prerogative and your option. Here's what I'm going to do. Sleep on it tonight, and if you still feel the same way in the morning, then I'm going to send that over for you to sign. So if I don't get the answer that moves the contract forward and I have the time, I want them to sleep on it. 9 out of 10 times when they sleep on it, they feel a little bit better about it and they'll still move forward with the transaction. Okay, so that's a Denise trick. Yeah, let's sleep on that one. See if you still feel that way in the morning. All right, so we want to bulletproof. What other things can you think of bulletproofing the transaction? Because you worked so hard to get them to this spot. Now we got to keep them at this spot, right? So what else can you do to bulletproof your transaction?
The CMA is a big part because then you know approximately where the appraisal is going to come in. And I think that that's really wise to have done that up front. Also, if you have to talk to the appraiser, you already have your comparables to give to him, right? 2, I think having your buyer approved as quickly as possible, so that isn't the part of the deal that falls apart as a buyer that can't get their loan. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
You know, that's a big part, that total pre-approval, even in today's world, they will take that offer of even maybe less for the property because it is such a good buyer.
right.
Um,
Mhm.
Yeah, because
as
the
you
buyer
were
is totally pre-approved.
As you were saying about the CMA, I was also thinking, Karen, there are, I'm fascinated by this, although something that I've seen is that seller agents don't always use a CMA or a comparable market analysis to their benefit, right? Or maybe they don't know how to speak to the seller to help the seller make an educated decision about today's market.
Right.
So another tool that we've used is doing something like this. Now, Karen, I'm super excited. You're the agent, the selling agent. I'm super excited. We got an offer on your property and got it accepted. Thank you for all your hard work. Or maybe you're negotiating, right? I'm going to send over our comparable market analysis, and this is what our buyers made their decision on. And if this goes, like if you have something different that you're looking at, I'd be happy to look at it.
Right. Right.
Or let's say that it's in negotiating the inspection notice and there's repairs that need to be made. I don't want to assume that that agent on the other side knows and understands the language of sales or the language of being in rapport that will help their seller make a decision to accept it.
Right.
So giving them, you know, so I do think it's one of these things where it's picking up the phone and you say, hey, Jeff, you know what? I know you've done this 1,000 times before. Is it okay if I share where my buyers are coming from?
Right.
And now you're going to say there's 3 things that they're looking at. This, this, and this. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure you're already aware. Should I go ahead and send over our comparable market analysis that we're using to look at this? And if you have something different, we'd be happy to look at it.
Yeah.
So now I've given Jeff, if Jeff is not an agent that is comfortable with that conversation, I've given him things that he can say and
Right.
use to help keep the deal together.
Sure. Sure.
I don't know about you. I can't tell you how many times I've walked through the office of a real estate office and an agent is asked, how do I negotiate this? And 5 minutes later, I hear them saying my words exactly on the phone to their client
Right.
because they didn't know what to say. And I think
Right.
the same is true on the other side sometimes too.
Yeah. Yeah. We used to have an agent in our office who would call that loading the other agent's lips. So, and he would call before he brought you that offer and talk to you about it. Or if you were showing one of his properties, he would call you and talk to you about the property before you showed it, so that you represented things in a way that he wanted them represented. So, yeah.
Oh, cool. I love that. I love that. I wrote that down because I'm gonna use that for the future. Loading
Good.
the other agent's lips.
Yep.
See, that's where I get the good stuff is right here.
Right.
This is cool. Oh, you think that I actually came up with some of that other stuff? No, I just got it from other smart agents across the country.
The longer you coach and teach, the more you hear these stories, the more you got to go with, right? It's a
Oh my
cumulative
gosh.
thing. Yeah.
It's the total advantage right here. It's the
Yeah.
total advantage. All right, very good. Now let's go ahead and go to this last section, and then we're going to do a wrap up of everything we've learned today and take away 1 or 2 things that you can do to really master and win with buyers. This last section is about creating clients for life. Now, we started the class with lead generating to our past clients and our spheres of influence. And we're going to end the class of how do we create that connection or that client for life, that surprise and delight that, like, I'm going to tell you, I'm not leaving Delta. I'm checking my Delta app for every flight before I go anywhere because they were so great to me for 1 5-minute period.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm telling everybody about it too.
Yeah.
Right. So let's take a look at page 31, create clients for life. And this is where we do a little bit of masterminding and a little bit of checking off the boxes as well. You know, so providing, it could be about providing a gift, a value, yet it's really about staying top of mind awareness. And I'd like to point out here the 36 touch. The 36 touch, there's actually a lot of research around the 36 touch that went into the Millionaire Real Estate Agent that Gary Keller talks about 36 touches a year, right? And so that breaks down to 3 per month in some way. Now, of those 36 touches a year, how many of those ought to be phone calls, like truly talking to the person or seeing them in person?
4.
Yeah.
4. Okay. And here's what I find when we hit the 4, and especially in smaller markets like yours, like when you hit the 4 contacts per year and the 32 by other means, you can actually, even in challenging markets, you can have a minimum of a 12, 15%, and even 18% return will do business with you or send you business every year. So let's say that you've worked up to, 500 people in your database. Gosh, if we just simply do the math on that, we have got 500 times 0.18, 18% would be 90 transactions. Now, let's say it's a challenging year and not as many people are doing things. You still have the same 500 people and you're only getting a 12% return. Well, that's 60 transactions. So when we talk about we might have to double down on our lead generation, we're not actually saying doubling. That database in a great year could give you 90, and a challenging year can give you 60. You only have to go make up the extra 30. You don't have to make up the whole thing.
Right.
And so this part of the database, our activities doesn't change.
Right. Right.
36 touches. Yeah, it's 36 touch. It
Right.
just, the return that year might give you something different. And don't take it personal if you're still getting between that 12 to 18% return. Part of it's the market. If you start dropping below that, once you get up there, then you have to take a look at what you're doing and maybe the needs of your clients or their makeup of the clients has changed a little bit. So the
Right.
very first thing we want to do is we want to take a look at what return are you getting?
Yeah.
And if we're not getting that return, well, that's where we go first.
Right.
That's where we go first. So we take a look at that. And it's really about top of mind and knowing every single person's 18 month to 2 year plan when it comes to their home. Every
Right.
single person. All right. Now you've closed on it, and that the day that you close, what's one of the things that you always want to do on the day of close?
I always bring a gift of some kind, something that we talked about. It's a personal gift. I don't have a boilerplate gift that I give. I give some form of a personal gift. And so that's usually the thing that I do either at the closing table, or I've gotten into the house, or I drive by afterwards and just, congratulate them at the house or whatever. So that's the thing that I do on the closing day.
Denise, I think one of the things that's most important on day of closing is to let people know that when that closing happens, that's not the end of the relationship. I'm going to schedule, whether it's I'm going to pop by and see you guys in a couple days because I have something I'd like to bring over, or tell me when move-in day. You said a bunch of friends are going to come over and help you guys move into the house. When is that? Because I'd like to bring pizza and just your lunch so that you don't have to try to supply that for everybody. Can I do that?
Yeah.
Because I think that I can figure out how to follow up, because they think that once we get the check, the relationship's over. And I want them to know that I'm going to call in a week and check in and make sure everything's okay. And that back door, none of the keys work for the back door. I didn't realize that. I will actually get my locksmiths to come out and match that to the rest of them. When would be a good day for you, right? I want to continue to provide some level of service and let them know that I'm still their realtor for life. It wasn't just words I said up front.
Yeah, you both hit on very, very important things. You thank them in some way, and you let them know that this relationship is just really starting. Like, and that could include anything. And, you know, I think of what's most important to that buyer on the day of closing. Did it close? Where are my keys? Can I get into the house? Do I have utilities?
Right.
Mhm.
Right? Where's my moving van coming from and where are they going to stay? Like, so like making sure that the fundamental needs are being met are so important. Thanking them for their business. I know you had a choice. Thank you so much. I think you're going to be so happy in this home. Now, I want to make sure that your basic needs are met today. Do you have a mattress? Do you need the name of a Hampton Inn close? Do you have, you know, do you have power and water? Did all that get turned on? Do you have a key to your mailbox? Is there, and then check in the next day. How was your first night in the home? That's called that relationship, right? Because if we go back to, you know, you're sitting across the table, you're my favorite relative across the table, and I'd be calling on you tomorrow.
Right.
Right. So it doesn't end. I think that's super important. Now,
Hey,
1
Denise.
week out.
Denise, can I
Yes,
ask you?
sir.
So
Yes.
something that I came up with a couple of years ago, and I actually inserted into one of our Ignite sessions with new agents, probably could use it actually with our existing, but you know, the brain rattler. So we use
Yeah.
that, right, to talk about lead sourcing, right? But in a town where so many people are moving from somewhere else, the brain rattler is a great way to say, okay, thinking about this particular person, okay, so they're a more affluent upper end type of a person. I need to try to get them in touch with maybe a broker. I need to get them in touch with a CPA, but everybody needs a mechanic. Everybody gets their hair cut. Everybody does, right? They're moving here with 2 fuzzy little dogs. I need to get them in touch with my groomer. If I can be their resource for so many things that I've just identified in their world,
Mhm.
I think I can reach a point where anything they need, I'm the first call. And
Yeah.
that's really what I want to be. I want them to call me when they need a babysitter. I need them to call me when they need a fence.
Yes.
I don't care. I want to
Yes.
be the resource for everything.
That is it. That is it right there, is that the resource for everything. And if we forget to call them or let them know that we can be that resource, then we lose that influence in their world,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
If you're, you know, like, let's say maybe they moved here for lifestyle. Maybe they joined a country club or a golf community. Being a connector could be part of it, right? Hey,
Yeah.
I know somebody else who likes to golf, who lives in that area. Would you like me to make a connection for you?
Right.
Right.
There's so many
Whether
ways.
we do it or whether it's something we do or we don't, we need to help
Right.
them find their people.
Right.
Yes, yes, yes. And then those 2 people always talk about how Jeff connected you, and that there is that good feelings because of that connection, right? And then every time they
Mhm.
see you, they tell the same Jeff story, and you're good with it, and you laugh about it, and then you're like, see you next time.
That's great.
I had 3 coaching clients. One of them, I was missing a hammer. I introduced him to someone else, and I guess I was missing a hammer that day too. And so they got together and they brought me a little blue hammer because they thought they said I needed this hammer. They painted the handle blue. Every time I saw them, they're like, "Do you still have your hammer?" And by the way, it's been 20 years. I still have that hammer. It's
Good
Denise
for you.
I was
So-
thinking that with your measuring tape, if we do branded measuring tapes, right? I've got measuring tapes that are like, I don't know, I think they're my grandmother's. They're little metal things. They're not even like big and plastic. They look like grandpa's. And so I think we keep those things,
We do.
right? So much better than
Mhm.
branding a bottle of wine.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. It's so true. Now, wine is good too. And I think there should be it's called wine and all right. So the biggest thing is working that through. And then on page 33, and this one, is really about having a system for everything. So if I have newer agents watching back, it's, your first couple transactions, I am a big proponent of the yellow pad of paper. And on your first couple transactions, you every time you have to do, there we go, the white pad. Every time you have to do an activity or an action, you write it on this piece of paper. And then after you've done a couple of transactions, you take that and you just organize them and put them into an actual spreadsheet, like a checklist of all the things that you have to do. And then when you get a new transaction under contract, you take that list, and you always have a couple extras other at the bottom, and you highlight all the ones on this transaction you have to get done. I am going to say, once you've done 5 to 10 transactions, I'm also a huge proponent of using a transaction coordinator, because I do believe that you have to know how to close the transactions if something were to happen, or it's a Saturday or Sunday and a question comes up. And yet leveraging yourself into, there are people who do this for a living and do it really, really well, and having them do that as well. And people see that.
They touch your client
Yes.
more. And so your
Mhm.
client feels over communicated with.
Yes.
Whereas if it was just you trying to touch your client that many times, it would be a little harder to do. But the TC touching your client at the same time you're touching them kind of builds this air of they've got it. They know what they're doing. They've got it.
It's so true, Karen. And, as an agent is scaling their business up, there's such a value in having specialized duties. And, so I'm going to talk about an agent who's closing, let's call it 50 to 60 transactions or 100 transactions. And I realize I'm talking to someone right now who has 7 new listings in the whole MLS. And I get that. And yet times change, right? So as somebody who is scaling a business up, you won't be able to necessarily talk with a buyer every single week. So the handoff is super important. And that's about that future pacing, right? So you're talking with a buyer up front, you go, I'm so excited to take you out and show you homes. I'd like to show you the process. Here's the piece of it that I do. Here's the piece of it that my, highly trained, organized person does for the paperwork. So you may not be talking to me every week, yet I'm going to share with you, I talk to my person every day. So if your deal goes sideways, I'll be calling you on that day. So, I call you about once through the middle of the transaction to check in with you. If I call you before that, take the call.
Right.
And this is somebody who's scaled, closed hundreds of deals a year, and I'll call them and they'll say, hey, Jeff, how's it going? They're like, what's wrong? I'm like, I'm just calling to check in. Oh, phew. You said you'd never call unless there's a problem. Well, I like to surprise and delight, just not that way.
Right.
So as you scale your business, it's all about future pacing, what to expect. All right. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's wrap up everything that we covered today. And I'm going to give you a couple minutes here to organize your thoughts about what we've discussed and pull out the best pieces. We did speak, we started at the very beginning that there is these 7 buyer cycles, or these 7 steps. You may be doing great in certain areas, and you're going to choose 1 or 2 to grow or strengthen or add a skill in, or maybe a topic that we talked about today. We talked about the best practices of real estate agents, and really it's about lead generation. As Jeff said, it may not be about more lead generation. It may be about, or adding more types of sources. It may be about redefining what those sources in and drilling deeper into those sources. So we talked about listings as the #1 way to bring buyers. We talked about different types of databases, agent referrals, experts. We then went into what do we do with the lead, right? So all about the pre-qualifying and asking the questions. So if we get into the practice that we're going to pre-qualify every single lead that we get to, if they don't answer the questions or they fail it, right, they don't go into our system. Or maybe they go into a long-term one if they answer enough of it correctly, right?
Right.
And what I like about this section is that way, and I'm going to call it this way. the bad leads don't hide the good leads.
Right.
And that's a challenge, right? We
It
collect
is.
all these leads and then we don't talk to the ones who actually need to buy a house. So we have to have ways of identifying that. We talked a lot about pre-qualifying is really it, right? And the three parts of it, their motivation, and then their ability to buy, and then their willingness to do it right now. We also talked about the appointment itself and the ways to set the buyer up that these are the best of the best, and then reminding them and strategies that we could use to help the buyers get under contract. And all those different strategies. So maybe you're doing really well at the beginning of it, and yet it's the getting them under contract part. So we're going to have to start future pacing about these strategies. Maybe you actually put a form together that says, here's all the strategies of why it's important. It's great to buy a house now, or how we're going to get you under contract. So there's things that you could do there. Maybe it is about now actually writing the offer. Maybe you're getting them to write. I had a client I was working with, and she was getting them to write offers, yet like, this is a bless her heart. We fixed it. And yet 75% of her offers were getting turned down. And this was even in a pretty even market. So we had to definitely help her with how to write a better, stronger offer, and future pacing the buyer to write that offer so they stayed together, because too many of them were falling apart, right? So that could be in that area. We talked about understanding the buyer signals, making those strong offers, how to have a close. And then we spent a lot of time this last section on securing those and creating those clients for life. So go ahead and take a look at your notes, and then we will come back and just see which one or two or three things that you're going to implement that will take this from a mediocre buyer program to truly succeeding.
Well, I'd still go back to the ones that I was at. I mean, really, I think that that it's just genius to find the top 100 HR people and companies around, and be sure that you're, on their list, whether it's that friending them on Facebook and LinkedIn and, all of those things, just so that you're constantly appearing, to sending them a new listing that you might have that might be of interest to somebody in a upper middle management position, et cetera. I really love the picking agents from, Scottsdale, Phoenix, wherever our market value is, and doing the TLs and the OPs, and same thing with them. You probably Facebook them as well as LinkedIn and Instagram them, so that you're showing up. I really like the deal where you talked about giving them 3 options. And I know that's just such a silly thing. Everyone should think about that, because the 3 options you gave them were really like not, you didn't like, you can reinvest in Google and then pull your money out a year from now and you'll have $10,000. I mean, you didn't actually give them any process to anything. You said you can buy the house, you can not buy the house.
We can renegotiate.
Right. It wasn't like you really, but it was really genius, as well as well, if you like it, why don't you buy it? So I guess one of the things that I like out of this is the candor, is to come back to candor with people. And the same agent who talked about the load your lips sort of thing used to say that he would say to people, I'm going to tell you the same thing that I would tell my mother, my brother, my father, my cousin, my best friend. And that is whatever it is that's really important in your market. You're not going to find another house like this at this price. The market isn't what it was in October of last year. You know what I'm saying? Whatever it is you have to say, whatever the bitter pill is, that's how he would represent it. And that's really being seriously honest with somebody. Maybe to some people more than they may be ready, but at least you know that you told them the news that they needed to hear. So
It is, and you know what, you're so spot on with that, is that it still goes back to care and candor. And if you make a decision outside of that, I still like you.
right.
You
That's
know,
all right.
it's,
You
I'm
gotta do
still
what's
gonna
right for you.
represent you.
Right.
And yet I needed to do my job and share this with you. And then when we end this conversation, I'm fighting for you. Yet right now, I got to share with you some challenges. Yeah.
There will always be
Great
another
stuff.
house. It may not be that house, but there will always be another house. I've been in real estate
There will.
27 years, and there is always another house.
There
So,
is.
yeah. So
There is, except for that one I'm still thinking of.
I know. Well, there's still one for Jeff and I that we didn't buy back when we were kids. We missed it. It was just off of a lake, and we missed it. But
Yeah.
and I still think about that dang house. So
that is so cool. Yeah, I think there, and yet that's why I buy the house when I like it, because I can still see that. Yeah,
right.
good stuff. All right. Anything else to add to that, Jeff, for takeaways?
You know, for me, because I take this information to teach with, and I think teaching around the 7-step buyer service cycle and identifying from 1 to 5 how you're performing in each of those areas is great, because you'll identify where you could probably use some conversations with top producers, saying, when you run into this, apparently I keep running into this objection, and this is the step it happens at. How do you handle that? Whatever it is, I think that's a great way to identify where your strengths are and where you could use some help.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff. In fact, you could have 7 weeks of training on these 7 steps.
Right.
Like a mastermind around simply that, for sure.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up. Here's what I took away. Well, Christine's going to put up a KWU evaluation, and I am working towards my master faculty certification, and I have to have something like a gazillion reviews to get there. So Christine, can you put up that slide so they know where to go to do the review? Here's what I got. Literally, my shirt today says, "No one succeeds alone." And I have learned as much from the two of you as hopefully I brought value to you today. And we're super excited for this series. And if you know of anyone who's looking, I don't know if you're aware, we still have some room. Okay, I thought that was funny. Okay, and
Denise, what region do you want me to put you in for the review?
Your region, it's a
Okay.
regional class. Yeah.
Okay, so I can put it in on our own. Okay.
You
Perfect.
can, yes.
Okay.
Yep. And yeah, so our next class coming up, let's see, is, I think it is customer service. And then we have Win with Sellers. We have a really fun lineup, and they're all about like this. We do them online. Obviously, these classes are 8-hour classes in a classroom. We know no one will sit on Zoom for 8 hours. And yet our goal is to break it down to what's most important today for who's on the call. So super excited by this, and we've had some really good results. We've had about this year, I think we've had about 57 people through this class. And we just started the second launch of it. So we have a couple others who didn't join us today, and that's all great.
Yeah,
Because
they'll listen to the tape.
They'll listen
Hi,
to
others. Sorry you didn't join us. Please come
it. We will
next
see you
time.
next time.
Yeah.
You guys are awesome. So thank you for showing up. I will stay on if anybody has some questions yet. Thank you very much.
It was good to see you. We love you. And next time you're in Durango, call. Let's go to lunch. Okay.
I know. Next summer, I got to get out of this heat. Whew.
Yeah. Come here, stay in the mountains.
It's
Yeah, I will.
82. It's 82 degrees and rains in the afternoon, and then it's 60 at night. It's beautiful.
Yeah. It's so beautiful.
I liked you till you said that, and then I had to listen to that because it's only
That's great.
104 today.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks,
Take
Denise.
care. Bye.
Hey, thanks you guys so much. I appreciate you.
All right.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.